Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water with Joyce Aldrich. Refresh your mind.
Welcome to this evening's edition of A Drink of Water. It is 22 degrees and 9:01 here at CHHA 1610 AM, and summer continues. I know we're going to be switching over to fall, but we've got some beautiful, beautiful transitional weather coming up our way. And we've got a great guest in studio tonight. This evening, joining me is Canadian-American singer Peter Campbell, and his voice has been described as liquid gold, and I know you're going to enjoy listening to tracks from his newly released CD, celebrating the music made famous by Shirley Horn. And to start off the evening, here is the title track from his first CD, A Street of Tears, released back in 2014. And the music, this is a beautiful, if you've had a rough day today, you're going to really enjoy listening to his gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous voice. And we'll be able to talk to Peter a little bit more, a lot more, all this hour. And here it is, Street of Tears, a beautiful French song originally. Here's the English translation.
Paris is warm, Paris is gay, light-hearted couples go by. Paris is warm, Paris is gay, but in the shadows my heart starts to cry. There's a street of tears in gay Paris, where we reach for the stars high above. Hand in hand we strolled, watched the night unfold. It was Paris, and we were in love. All the dreams we dreamed have gone astray, though our love and our laughter are through. I can't break the chains, for my heart remains on the street of tears with you. Oh, the dreams we dreamed have gone astray, though our love and our laughter are through. I can't break the chains, for my heart remains on the street of tears with you.
And that's Street of Tears, and that's the beautiful voice of Peter Campbell, and his first CD produced here in Canada in 2014, was it, Peter?
Yes, indeed.
And that was the title track from Street of Tears. Beautiful, beautiful album. And you
Thank
just released another album and celebrating the music of Shirley Horn.
I did indeed.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that was just this April, I think you released that, was it? April?
It was released April 28th.
And that's
Yes.
Loving You.
Yes.
Loving you with your voice. And you've got you've been here like, what, 5 years?
Yes.
So you're like a newcomer.
Yes, I mean, I'm
Canadian and American mix.
I am.
Canadian mom, American
Canadian mother,
dad.
American father.
Yeah.
and I was raised in the Big Apple of New York City.
You took Manhattan.
I
You
didn't.
take Manhattan.
I did indeed. But would always would spend most of my summers in Canada, and then when I went to university, I decided to go to school in Canada.
Oh, good.
So, at that time, I kind of wanted to establish myself within Canada, because I had grown up in both cultures.
We like that you did that.
Yeah.
It was good to have you here.
Yeah, and then didn't return for. I don't want to give my age away. I might have to kill somebody.
No, don't worry.
I'm
You're just a baby.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not ready to go to a home yet, but
No.
I'm not 25 either.
No, but your voice is gorgeous.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No,
I just realized, though, because I haven't heard that track in a few years, and I realized, God, I'm depressing.
Well, let's just talk about that.
Right. Let's please.
No, but I listened to both albums, obviously,
Right.
and I found there's a melancholy in there, but it's a beautiful kind of melancholy throughout the songs, and about love, and about it's very real and very beautiful. And I thought, we're going to play songs, obviously, from both albums, and with your choice. It's going to be your choice tonight.
Okay.
I've got them lined
Great.
up. But the thing is that there's a melancholy quality to your music, and your voice goes very deep, into the soul. So it's almost like I thought maybe you're like a torch singer, but you're not. But that kind of feeling, like. And you don't talk about your music. And I thought, like you're a jazz singer, but really you talk about yourself as really being a traditional pop singer. More like. So tell us a little bit about that, what that means to you.
Well, and, the thing with creativity is it only gets better as you get older.
Oh, yeah.
And so, when you're in your 20s and, you're physically at your peak and all of this, to then be expected to know who you are and have lived all of life, you just can't do it. I mean, and I don't mean to sound trite, but
just can't.
But anybody over the age of 40, which I am, understands that you didn't know anything back then, really. It's one thing we can all agree on, I think. And so
it's like the fame kids, I
Right.
want to live forever. I want to learn how to fly, and that kind of rambunctious, frenetic kind of thing that goes on with youth.
And I think,
Sort of clipping the waves,
yeah. And so the older you get, the more you're going to understand yourself and what you do well and play your ace card. I mean, we can't all I can't sing every song well. My voice isn't suited for that. And and I also believe firmly in being authentic, because I think it reads if you're not. And I think, I remember going back into my 20s, when I got out of university. I mean, I did some jingle work, but that business was kind of drying up at the time. Right. And then I did a production deal, which was absolutely dreadful. It was material that was written for me. It had nothing to do with me. I did the vocals. I had spent many years in studio, so I was very comfortable. But the end product was absolutely abysmal. And I remember playing it for a friend who was in the business, had been on Broadway, and she said, they sucked all the life out of you. Because I had nothing to say. And when I make the distinction, and I'm rather adamant about this,
Right.
because there can be a tendency for everybody and their cousin and their kitchen sink to be a jazz singer, quote unquote.
I know. Even people, they're switching their genre, and,
Right.
they're sliding into jazz, thinking that's going to be.
And frankly, many of them don't really know what that means.
Mm.
And maybe because I come from a classical music background of many people within my family.
Oh, you have a rich heritage.
So I was exposed to, what it takes. And then also because of my father, who's worked in the business, was able to meet jazz musicians at an early age. And so I understood what it really meant. And
He was a broadcast producer.
He is, but he, this is a little...
And a clarinetist in New York's high school. I'm just reading from your bio.
Oh, sure.
But, yeah.
But for instance, in the late 60s, which was before my time, he hired Bill Evans to write a jingle for him, and I'm not sure what the commercial was, but I believe it became the basis for Comrade Conrad, which was a staple of Evans's repertoire. And because my mother tells me of meeting Evans at the Village Vanguard.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So my father has a huge interest in jazz. But the difference with me is that when I say traditional pop, I'm talking about Rosemary Clooney, Tony Bennett, Joe Stafford.
And they weren't really necessarily jazz singers.
Exactly.
That was the pop of the day.
Right. And you
can't slide, and a lot of people slide all of that into the jazz genre, and it's not.
Right. I mean, even Judy Garland had a feel for jazz in a sense, just because of her phrasing and certain rhythmic choices.
Right.
But she would never be described as a jazz singer. And
no.
And I think that for me, I'm very kind of adamant to make that point for myself, because if you expect me to be a jazz singer, you're going to be very disappointed, because I'm not scatting up a storm.
No.
I'm making very deliberate choices, perhaps with melody and rhythm, but it's not done on the fly.
No, and I was going to say the big bands were the rock bands of the day. I mean,
Absolutely.
That's what they were.
Right.
And the thing is that when you are singing authentically for yourself, I mean, you sing the song, which is what the traditional pop artists did. They sang the song. They sang the notes. They sang it with meaning,
right.
with beautiful phrasing, with beautiful everything, and that's what you're doing. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, it's having great respect for the writers. As somebody who does not write myself, I have always been very interested in unique writing. And it is the rare moment when I sing a song that is relatively well known.
Well, I love the choices you've made in your songs, and certainly we do get a slice of Manhattan when I hear your music. It's like I feel like I'm in one of those beautiful venues.
It's interesting that you say that. Yeah, I think New York is kind of in your bones.
Oh yeah, you've got a New York state of mind and voice. When we come back, we're going to go to break. We go to break at 9:15, and I'd like to play a song coming out of break. Which one would you like us to play for you from which album?
Let's see.
Like Street of Tears or Loving You? There's your choices.
Why don't we play the title track, the first track from Street of Tears, which is called Loving You, but it's a different Loving You, not to confuse the listeners. This one is by Stephen Sondheim.
Okay, we'll be doing that then when we come back from break, right after these messages, with more Peter Campbell and his beautiful voice, and more music from his CD, Street of Tears.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
You're listening to A Drink of Water here on CHHA 1610 AM. This is Loving You a Whole Lot from Peter Campbell from Street of Tears.
Loving you is not a choice, it's who I am. Loving you is not not a choice and not much reason to rejoice, but it gives me purpose, gives me voice to say to the world, this is why I live. You are why I live. Loving you is why I do the things I do. Loving you is not in my control. But loving you, I have a goal for what's left of my life. I will live and I would die for you. Everywhere I look, you are there. Everywhere I look, things are different. Everything seems right. Everything seems possible. Every moment bursts with feeling. Why is love so easy to give and so hard to receive? However long I live, I now believe a thing I never knew. I'm someone to be loved, and that I learned from you. I see what comes from being loved. Strange how merely being loved, you see things clearly, things I feared like the world itself, I now love dearly. I want to live, now I want to live, just for being pain I nursed inside for all these years, all that vain and bitter self-concern,
Jazz Loving You, and Peter Campbell is here, and his beautiful voice is right here in studio with me tonight, and so happy to have you here, Peter. Before we went to break, we were talking a bit about the difference between traditional pop and jazz, and you said you were talking during break that you chose this particular tune, Loving You, from Street of Tears, for a reason, because it does have jazz elements and the performers on this, the musicians on this album, are traditional jazz players in Toronto, actually. So you want to just elaborate on why you chose this one?
Sure. And actually, this is my arrangement, which I brought to Mark Keysweater, who has been my musical director for about...
Another American.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, here in Canada. Wonderful pianist.
Oh.
Brilliant.
The greatest. And I brought it to him about a week before we went into studio. And this particular song was composed by Stephen Sondheim. It's from his score to Passion, which is an incredible score.
Yeah, incredible.
And very
composer.
dark.
Yeah.
And in the show, it's really a dirge. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly slow. It's sung by the lead character, Fosca. And so has very little to do with what you just heard. But I heard it a certain way, and so I changed the key signature to a waltz, and we jazzed it up, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But except for two little things in my vocal, that is basically the way it was written. I mean, who am I to play around with the work of Stephen Sondheim? That would be sacrilegious. I would be a fool and rather presumptuous. I mean, I leave the genius alone.
Yeah.
And because without the Sondheims or the Jimmy Webbs or the Michel Legrands of the world, I'd be picking my nose in front of a microphone.
Yes, I'm going to just interject. My mother, who was a singer.
Yes.
And I used to say, well, I'm writing my own songs now. And so she says, no, Joyce, she says, so many beautiful songs have been written, and they need to be sung. She says, don't be afraid to sing those songs. And I thought, you know what? So I didn't write as many songs, and I thought, I'm going to choose those songs to sing. And a lot of singers, they want to get up, and the indie thing is really wonderful, and all the singer-songwriter things. Sort of digressed a bit, but sort of brought that to mind. And it's wonderful to sit there and play your own music, but we need to remember this beautiful music and to keep it alive, and which is what you've done in these two albums brilliantly. Well, and
there's and this also has to do with the industry, and we were talking about this earlier before we went to air.
Yes.
And I remember Jimmy Webb, the great American composer, Wichita Lineman, Up and Away, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, who I worship at the feet of Jimmy Webb, said in a concert or an interview, I forget, that the singer-songwriter movement of the early 70s, in his mind, eventually led to the detriment of the music industry. And this is why. I mean, there was a time when a singer sang, a lyricist wrote, and a composer composed. And you played your ace card.
Wow.
That it was rare that people could do all things well. And because of the singer-songwriter movement, which it became an economic thing for the record labels. This is getting very in the weeds, but
no, it's a good weed. We'll smoke this weed.
Absolutely,
This is good. This is good.
And I'm not. This is not to diminish the work of Carole King or James Taylor or Joni Mitchell, who are extraordinary artists. But
that's right. They were extraordinary. That's the word.
Right, but not everybody is Joni Mitchell. Not everybody is Carole King, and I think it pushed the labels to begin to then sign artists who would write. And for better or for worse, maybe some were great, maybe some were not, because they saw publishing as a means of financial profit. And so, so I think that encouraged this, but it didn't necessarily encourage great work. It was done for economic interests, and so when I, as a singer who does not write, I've been trying to write one great ballad for the last 15 years. It's never going to happen. I'm just not, I don't have it in me. I'm not Paul Simon. It's just, that's it, you know?
Same here. I mean, I've written some nice songs, but they're not hits, you know? And most of them are. I'm going to come back after break because this is a very interesting conversation. I want to continue after break. We've got to have a song though, but we're gonna come in right after break with this because I don't want to lose the thread.
Sure.
And then we'll play some more music from Loving You. We got to get into that
Absolutely,
album.
please.
Okay, from the Shirley Horn. So we're going to go to break now. You're listening to CHHA 1610 AM. I'm Joyce Aldrich, and I have a very, very talented and very intelligent artist in the studio tonight, opening up, unpacking some interesting things for us to hear about the music industry. And we'll be back right after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Oh, we're back after a short break, and you're listening to A Drink of Water. If you're just tuning in now, I have Peter Campbell in studio, and he's a Canadian-American here in Canada for the last 5 years, and I'm enjoying so much having you here, Peter, because this is the thread that we're following is very important. I want to start this off. We're talking about the way the music industry, the singer-songwriter, that whole thing has really muddied up the waters of music, because it goes even further, because you said there would be a singer, a composer, and the musicians, you know, they're all separate. And now the person is a singer, the composer, the musician often, if they play an instrument. They're also the promoter, the booker,
right?
The marketer, the person, and you know, record labels won't even maybe look at you unless you have a following. You have to have social media thing,
and you have to be a computer expert.
Yeah,
it's called multitasking. Exponentially,
badly,
insanely, right?
Insanely,
exactly.
And I'm telling you, I see people, and I respect the musicians and the artists who are out there. Like, I'm one of them, you're one of them. But you know, I see people just doing the same circuit, doing the same thing, going through the same rut, spinning their tires, and I feel really badly because I'm thinking, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. This isn't the way it was. Like I told you, my mother had a gig for 27 years at the Brunswick House, and she could pay her rent, you know, and go to Vegas.
It's interesting that the first tune you played, which is entitled Street of Tears, which is the title track, was originally recorded by the great Julie Wilson, who was a wonderful American cabaret singer who passed away not too long ago. But she was, and I had the great pleasure to actually audition for her once many years ago and to see her work live. And she was extraordinary. I mean, she was what you think of when you think of the 1950s and the elegant boîtes of New York, singing this incredible material.
Artists don't have time to be that anymore.
Also they were able to have a residency that was a consistent source of income. And they had a following that before you had Facebook and Twitter and all this other stuff.
Well, now you're expected to bring your friends and family and your workmates and everyone, you know, and that's the law of diminishing return, because you cannot keep inviting your friends and family to your gigs, and they're going to get tired. It's like being an insurance salesman, you know. As soon as they see you, they run. I'm sorry I missed your show. I really wanted to go. Blah blah. You know, I couldn't make it, and I'm so sorry. Did you have a good gig? Was everything good? No, I had 9 people there. Thank you very much, and let's go on. You know? Right,
exactly.
Anyway, but that's the thing. So it has really watered and muddied everything, watered things down, muddied the waters as well, and so.
And the most successful of artists have careers with incredible ebbs and flows. Shirley Horn being a very good example of that.
Okay, tell me.
You know, in the early 60s, there was a big push for her, and Miles Davis was an early champion, and famously, if I understand the story, would not open at the Vanguard in 1960 if she didn't open for him. I mean, he wouldn't play the Vanguard, and she was relatively unknown.
He really advocated for her.
He really did, and he didn't do that for many singers. Apparently Streisand was another singer that he admired, but he wasn't really interested in singers. And
Most musicians aren't.
Well, we get
it's very rare.
Well, the old term for female singers in a big band was the girl singer. She's the girl singer.
She'd get up and sing her 2 tunes and sit down.
Exactly. Look pretty, do your thing, and then get away.
Mm-hmm.
But so having that advocacy was obviously very important, but the business changed, particularly in the 1960s, and that affected many artists like Tony Bennett and artists who had been hugely successful because of the advent of rock and roll.
Right.
And Horn, from what I understand, was going to have none of it. Plus, she wanted to raise a family. She didn't want to move to New York City. And so she stayed in Washington, D.C. and played locally and raised her family, and then began to come back in the late 70s. But it wasn't until her mid-50s, when she had worked for another 10 years and gained a following, that she was signed to Verve Records. And that's when her real renaissance began.
And life experience, which we talked about
Absolutely.
talked about at the top of the show.
Absolutely. Her work, and it's interesting because Horn would revisit material that she had recorded on earlier records. And the difference is subtle. It's not like Joni Mitchell when she did, Both Sides Now back in '68, and then Both Sides Now in 2000.
It was a whole other side.
It was extraordinary, but it was
gorgeous.
It was just a different thing and a different voice.
Yeah.
Horn's work is not, the arrangements may not have been so different, but the knowledge, the life experience was incredibly
Her
present.
interpretation will be different.
Absolutely. You just, songs that I've sung for 25 years, I'm naturally going to have a very different take on them at a certain age, just because I've lived and lost and loved and learned and all of those lovely things.
Well, your songs sure do resonate with me.
Thank you.
At age 62, for me, I'm going, oh my gosh, I've done that. So let's play something. Loving You, celebrating Shirley Horn. Yes, there you go. And again, the great Mark Kieswetter is on here as well.
Yes.
And joined by Red Schwager, Ross McIntyre, and Kevin Turcotte, and produced right here in Toronto at Toronto's Canterbury Music Company by John Beadle Bailey. So we're going to play which one?
Why don't we play Forget Me? It's kind of a jazzy tune.
Okay. And we can just keep talking till it
Sure,
floats.
absolutely.
I have no idea what's going on tonight. I
It's
don't know.
life. That's
It
just
must
roll
be,
with it.
Is there a full moon tonight? I don't know. Here it is.
There we
Look
go.
at that. Right on it. Forget Me.
Forget me. You're always saying forget me. And as your kisses upset me, you whisper you must forget me. Forget me. You're always saying forget me. As your caresses upset me, you whisper you must forget me. You know my heart is all aflame, 'cause you set it on fire. You know I'll never be the same. Your love's my sole desire. How can I forget you? You beg me just to forget you. But from the day that I met you, I knew I'd never forget you. you set it on fire. You know I'll never be the same. Your love, my sole desire. How can I forget you? You beg me just to forget you. But from the day that I met you, I knew I'd never forget you. I knew I'd never forget you. I knew I'd never forget you.
Forget You, and that's from Loving You, a celebration of Shirley Horn, here with Peter Campbell. Peter, you released that CD at the Jazz Bistro, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Nice venue.
Great. Oh, it's
so beautiful.
It is, and it's for this type of material, it was kind of the only place because
in town, yeah.
Well,
we lost a few venues. Those are great.
Because I think, which is something that I have found a bit of a struggle, because I do a kind of supper club sort of performance style thing where...
Which is that New York thing again. I love it.
I was, I missed out on being able to, walk on 52nd Street in 1952 and, go to hear this singer or hear Carmen McRae or Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
Because of my delivery and the choices choice of songs, I need to be able to ideally perform in a venue where I can be heard,
mm-hmm.
and that can be tough in any city.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's, noise and drinking and all of that, which is totally acceptable. I'm not criticizing it, but when you are predominantly a singer of ballads and torch songs, you need to be heard. And so,
you can't,
I'm going to get drowned out. So there you go.
Well, okay. So I'm inviting people to go to petercampbellmusic.com because they can't hire you because you are for hire. Absolutely.
Honey, you got to, as Dylan said, you got to serve somebody.
That's right.
We're all right on the level of being prostitutes. So there you go.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Well, sadly, a lot of us as musicians have had to, bend a little low. So anyway, the thing is, it's a family show, Peter. But we have had to grovel, is what I mean. We've had to for a lot of things. But if people want to do that, they can contact you through petercampbellmusic.com. It's PeterCampbell music.com, and go there. And there's a contact under contact. Take a look at all the wonderful. Do the videos and the music and everything and your bio, and to contact you. And house parties may be a good idea, or if they've got a beautiful, event coming up and they want a fabulous music, they can.
Absolutely.
They've got to give.
I'm here. We'll sing. Totally.
Absolutely. Because there's not a lot of great places.
Shy.
No, you're not, and that's good. You've got a beautiful personality.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so happy. I'm glad. Well, it's been a couple of years. Long story there.
Right.
Anyway, and you have a long story. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about what you mean by you took Duke Ellington's remark to heart. There are two kinds of music: good music and the other kind. Now, I don't think we've touched on that yet, so we'll go to break. And I want to play something when I come back out of break. What would you like me to play?
Why don't we play "You Won't Forget Me," which is the last track on the album.
That's right. And we'll leave with another tune, but we're going to go to break right now, and we'll play some more Peter Campbell when we come back right after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
forget me, though you may try. I'm part of memories too wonderful to die, and it will happen that now and then you'll fall to wondering if we shouldn't have tried again. You won't forget me on nights like this. The moon will cast on you the shadow of my kiss. No matter where you are, with whom you are, you'll think of me. You won't forget me. Just wait and see. Forget me on nights like this. The moon will cast on you the shadow of my kiss. No matter where you are, with whom you are, you think of me. You won't forget me. Just wait and see.
As You Won't Forget Me from Loving You, and that's Peter Campbell's beautiful voice. And we won't forget you, Peter Campbell. Thank you for coming on A Drink of Water this evening.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And because it's all about the music, we're going to play Loving You, which is the title track from Loving You, celebrating Shirley Horn.
There are a lot of Loving Yous as we played. earlier.
And we're loving our audience, and we're going to have to love them and leave them. That's not on your... It's not on there. So we're going to play this now so we have time to hear that last note. And thank you very much, Peter, and thank you to our listeners for joining us for another drink of water.
Every time we meet, it's something new. I find one thing more to love in you. And that's how it's been right from the day you came my way. And the more I learn just who you are, and I see what we have found so far, more and more I know that I could go my whole life loving you. You taught me how to share and how to give. You taught me just how warm and loving love can be. You taught me for as long as I may live, I must have something to believe in the way that I believe in you and me. If you have the time, I'll talk you through how my life has changed since I met you. All the reasons why I know that I must somehow spend my days, and my days loving you. I'll spend my days and end my days loving you.
CHHA